Hey everybody, I'm DJ Sixsmith. Welcome to Sit Down. Michael Kosta here with us. He's got his brand new comedy special. Michael Kosta, Detroit, LA, New York. Mike, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. Feels weird to even say three different cities because we aren't going to any of them.
So take me back. How did you pull it off and how did you come up with the idea?
Well, it was definitely shot before COVID-19, but I wanted a comedy special that one followed my career as a comedian. I started in the Detroit area. I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I went to the coasts, and I kind of went back to Michigan, and I went to the coasts, and that's what this is. I always prided myself on being middle of the country, but now I live on the coast, and now I'm a coastal elite, and comedy should be for everybody, and everybody should laugh, and that's how we came up with it, and thankfully executed it, and I'm excited for everyone to watch it.
Yeah, I was checking out the trailer and it's interesting because you've obviously traveled to a lot of different cities and some jokes work in some cities, audience react differently. And you allude to that with the whole garbage disposal thing in New York versus
Yeah.
LA. So what was it like playing with that concept with three different cities here?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to show audiences was that I think there's a misconception that everyone is very sensitive and afraid now. I mean, in the special, I ridicule New York City to New York City's face, and they love it. I roast Los Angeles on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood to Los Angeles, and they love it. Why do they love it? Because it's a comedy show. It's a comedy club. All of this comes from love. And look, you're right. Some jokes worked better in New York for New Yorkers. But also some jokes work for everybody, and that's kind of what I wanted to show. And some people would label me a road comic, a comic that travels quite a bit. I take that as as a a professional part of this job. I should be able to make everybody laugh, and that's what the special tries to do.
Totally. And you've been to all these different places, you
Yeah.
know how to play to different audiences. And one of the great things you do is that you're self deprecating, you put your own stuff out there, and you're willing to put other people on blast because let's be real, comedians need to call things out. So, why do you think that's such an important role, especially in a culture today where there isn't as much of that, or there is more criticism when that comes about? Do you feel more of a responsibility as a comedian when it comes to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you alluded to why it feels okay to listen to a comic rip someone else down if you kind of rip yourself down first. I love to put people on blast. I love to put ideas on blast. I think with all the BS that's out there, comics' job is to sift through that and to kind of get the truth to you. Now, that being said, I also think there's a little too much comics or truth tellers, and we're the only ones that really tell the truth. I'm also trying to make you laugh.
Hmm.
I'm trying to release the tension that exists with these societal topics. Also, if I just come out on stage and start ripping into you, you're going to go, "What? I hate this guy." So I better make fun of myself a little bit first.
So we get some city work in this one. We get some stuff about you. What are some of the ideas that you're ripping on here in your special that people can be excited about?
Well, for one, and I've talked about this before, I despise technology. I believe it's slowly rotting our brain, killing us, making it impossible for us to actually interact in real life. And what's hilarious about this thesis is one, because of COVID, technology is the only thing that's keeping any of us interacting at all. So I may have been incorrect in my thesis. All I have to do is bring up how much we've relied on delivery during this time. But I much preferred a time when we weren't all scrolling like this, when we were interacting face to face, having to confront each other about problems face to face. You say something much different when you're actually talking to someone and looking them in the eye than when you're just posting on the internet.
Or,
So,
or looking at somebody through a Zoom, right?
or looking at a Zoom. I mean, that's true. It's even harder to ridicule someone when you're talking to them on Zoom. So I went after technology pretty hard. I went after New York City pretty hard as a Midwesterner. When I moved to the coast, I just couldn't believe what it was. I couldn't believe how cutthroat it was. I couldn't believe how in LA, if it rained, people would cancel lunch. And, everybody says they're going to come to your birthday party and then nobody would show up to your birthday party. So I felt like it was my duty to go after those topics.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with those cities, and there's also a lot to unpack with your story. And the Daily Show has obviously been a big part of your career, but you allude to it in the special where you were at in your career, like you were grinding as a comedian, living with your parents, you're in a twin bed. I mean, can you just paint that picture for the audience here before you got onto the show?
Sure. I was living in Los Angeles, auditioning like crazy, not getting anything. At one point, I was Googling veterinary schools because I'm going, maybe I'll become, but I only wanted to be a vet for small, cute dogs,
Not the big ones.
or no reptiles, and then I got the opportunity to do the Daily Show, and my parents were living in New York City at the time. So I was hired on the Daily Show, 38 years old, living with my parents. And it was a fun dichotomy of having some status, being on a show that is as successful as the Daily Show, yet literally going home and having my mom get mad at me because my shoes were in the hallway. So it was fun, and it was a real moment of my life. And people watch the special and they go, well, is that true? And I go, it's all true. Everything in there is true. And, I'm better for it.
We've seen all these different iterations of the Daily Show, and it feels like this year the show has cut through in such a big way. Why do you think it resonates, especially in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, it's always resonated, but Trevor really popped off this year more than ever. I think that's the reason. Trevor, I mean, he looks at American society and politics with a perspective that maybe hasn't been on TV before. I mean, he's from South Africa, a Black kid who grew up in apartheid, and everything that is happening in the United States right now, that's a fresh perspective. And it isn't always comfortable. It isn't always something that everybody wants to hear, but they feel better for him for saying it. And I think I'm on the show. I'm a cast member of the show, and I still will watch him and just go, ooh, that's great take, or that's an interesting perspective. And he's my coworker. He's also my boss. He's also my
boss slash coworker, and he's stimulating and engaging even somebody who you work with every single day, which I think is awesome. And what would you say has been the biggest surprise of the experience so far?
Oh man, I mean, I've learned so much. I was a touring comedian for 14 years before I came into the Daily Show. I don't want to say I was cocky, but I felt like I knew a little bit about comedy, and it's humbling. It's humbling to be around so many great comedy professionals. There's so many wonderful writers who are there, and you'll work with them and you'll realize how they approach these topics with such different perspectives. Stand-up is a lone sport. I'm out there alone. So for me to now work with 6 different people who have 6 different perspectives and points of view than me that I don't always agree with, and they don't always agree with me, but then we work together to put out a piece that works, is difficult, but very rewarding.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about that painting over your shoulder there. What's the backstory there?
What painting?
The one of that guy that kind of looks like you.
This is a portrait of me, and it was made for a pilot I did for Comedy Central maybe 11 years ago. And I still don't know if they've picked up the pilot. They never let me know. So I kind of kept it up there, and hopefully somebody at the network will let me know if that pilot I did over a decade ago is going to work.
Hey, you never know. Look, you got your special now. The pilot may not have happened, but it all worked out.
Yeah.
Michael, nice to meet you, man. Best of luck. Stay healthy. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Watch the special, everybody. Thank you.